Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today.
This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. 13 days to go, and what we see, the roaches are trying to disappear one by one. Today, we're going to piggyback off of and continue the conversation from my last video by dissecting Mark Zuckerberg's recent announcement about restoring free expression on Meta platforms. We will also have a first look into Nick Clegg's replacement and what he has to say about the future of free speech on Facebook. Let's try and understand what is driving this sudden love for free speech. Is it really about promoting open dialogue or covering up for something else?
But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship.
Just in the few seconds alone here, there's something about his tone and what he's saying that I don't trust. So already he kicks off and admits that, yes, there's a small percentage of censorship really downplaying the seriousness of what they were doing and attributing it to the systems, not human error, but the system. So they can't take any type of accountability or blame anyone for this because they are now blaming the algorithm. Oh, so you mean to tell me that it was the algorithm that programmed itself to go after and troll and target people in the Meghan community to get them kicked off? Right.
The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
Oh, the recent elections feel like a cultural tipping point. Is that because it has been exposed that information had been hidden from us from the last election? The cultural shift was being exposed for being liars and holding back information from people that was very pertinent to shaping our so-called quote-unquote democracy or constitutional republic. The fact that these people have ruined the word democracy in itself, I think, should be banned from the dictionary now.
More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
So I ask you, is this announcement genuine reform or a cover-up? Zuckerberg's decision to ditch fact checkers for a community-driven note system, much like X's model, may on the surface seem like a victory for free speech. But for those, like many of us, who actually lived through what was going on, one must ask, why now? The timing of this announcement feels less like a policy shift and more like an act of desperation. Zuckerberg's platforms have been under scrutiny for years, not just for political bias, but for harboring some of the most heinous activities online, including pedophile rings. Yet, these platforms were quick to silence American voices and conservative viewpoints especially during the pivotal 2020 election season. And we all know that Prince Harry and Meghan had been very much involved with working with Facebook and getting advertisers to stop running ads on certain accounts, certain voices, as well as working closely with third parties like the CCDH on who to blacklist. I'm really trying to figure out how Nick Clegg got this position and why Mark Zuckerberg thought that it was wise to hire someone from the UK who was from the UK government to be the head of global policy and content moderation.
So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms.
You see, this is all about optics. Zuckerberg saw the writing on the wall as early as August that Trump was most likely going to win the election. And I do believe that he wrote that apology letter to our government saying, yeah, we could have done a bit better. We shouldn't have let the government bully us into making choices that maybe was violating Americans' free speech. And so now we have this move where it does feel like an attempt to curry favor with the incoming Trump administration, which has been vocal about restoring free speech. While all this sounds positive, I somehow don't believe it, especially if he is looking to adopt a little bit more of what Elon Musk is doing, and in that sense, could have the policy of giving people their free speech, but not giving them free reach. And there's a perfect example that the Duchess of Sussex shared with me around how, yes, she still has freedom of speech on the platform, but Facebook is not allowing anyone to see what she's saying. As you can see, Blair has over 1,000 friends on Facebook and decided to post the letter that Zuckerberg wrote to Congress admitting that they were colluding with the government censoring Americans. And all it got was one like. That's how you know when you have free speech, but not free reach. And this is a perfect example of how they will limit you, even though they're going to allow you to say whatever you want. It's just that people are not going to be able to see it.
Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower-severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action.
You see, he's not fixing this situation because this already exists. This is exactly what has been going on, is actual people who have been reporting various accounts to get them pulled down, not just reporting them, spamming them. He's not addressing the malicious actors who are paying others to go out there, and that's all they do is spam people in order to get them to get pulled down because it triggers the system. So I'm not really sure how this is going to get better, but I do see a way in people like Meghan Markle who will say, oh, we'll just buy more people to go ahead and pull others down. We'll just give them money to go ahead and click that report button, and that's all they do. What I see here is pure deflection on putting all the blame on machines versus human accountability. You see, Nick Clegg's departure from Meta isn't just a reshuffling or Nick saying, oh, I think I'm ready to move on. This is a result of pressure coming from most likely the Trump administration, and most likely Nick Clegg got fired. The person replacing Nick Clegg is Joel Kaplan. Now, Joel Kaplan did work for the White House, but it was during the George W. Bush administration where he served as the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. Kaplan's promotion within Meta to replace Nick Clegg has been viewed as part of Meta's strategy to align, or at least navigate better, with the incoming Trump administration. We're going to hear what he has to say in just a bit.
The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down.
I don't think this is going to solve anything because already they are missing the bad stuff. I think it's more about focusing on the wrong stuff, not stuff that is politically motivated. And that's the issue that we have here. Don't just blame the machines because you had human beings who were involved with a lot of these decisions.
Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed. So we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now. And we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive.
Do you hear how friendly the language is? It's almost like, yeah, we're listening to our members on the platform. And yeah, there was a consensus that they didn't want to hear about information regarding politics. So we're recommending content that's more positive. But we're going to bring that back because it does turn out that you guys want to know about things such as the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas.
You know, this I find particularly interesting. Like, why is this important to tell people that he's moving this particular team from California, a blue state, to Texas, a red state? Like, what difference is it going to make? If you implement these policies, it doesn't matter what state you're in, you just need to follow them.
As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there.
Raise your hand if you think that this change of heart that he's having now about free speech would have happened if the election had a different outcome. What I see here is he's now aligning himself with a pro-speech stance now because he's not only trying to avoid jail, but also to rehabilitate his image and that of Meta in the eyes of a new political landscape. What I see here is Zuckerberg looking out for himself and only himself because he needs the government to be on his side.
Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further.
As if you couldn't hate these tech billionaires anymore, you have this little bitch sitting up here playing a victim and saying, well, essentially our hands were tied because we're getting pressure from South American governments, China, even the US government was pushing for censorship. And you played no part in getting the last administration elected into office with all those Zuckerbucks. Now, if you've been paying attention, then you would know that even before Biden and Harris got into office, they were pressuring Facebook to censor conservative speech, along with what Harry and Meghan had been doing with the advertisers and working with Facebook. So for you to say that, oh, all of a sudden you care about free speech is bullshit, in my opinion.
But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right. And these are complex systems, they're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
After I watched this, I said to myself, if I had a Facebook account, I would have deleted it immediately because this guy doesn't deserve time nor putting your information on there for him to make money off of it. Not once did he acknowledge or even apologized for the harm that was caused by suppressing people's free speech. The consequences to that, we had to suffer the past 4 years as a result of not being able to have information at our fingertips that would help us. Instead, we were pushed propaganda and lies in order to influence us to make decisions that now we're suffering for. That's the problem with having censorship. It's the fact that our election was affected, COVID outcomes and injuries, the amount of people that suffered from that, as well as even in our little community. And what I find so frustrating when I see this is here we have them talking about, we're focused on disinformation. When you look at who was putting out the disinformation, and I'm not going to say it's misinformation, the information that Harry and Meghan put out was purposely harmful in order to not only incite hatred, as well as psychologically mess with people, but also to drive people to eventually take action that was negative. And this is what we're seeing with Meghan. The reason why we see all this bullshit is to get a reaction, so she can come back and say, you see, this is why we need laws, and this is why we have to safeguard our online media, because our children, in this situation, it's these people that need to be held accounted for, not just sitting back and sweeping everything under the rug and saying, we're going to do better. No, these people made life hell the past 4 years. And if you don't think about your own situation, think about what they did to the Queen. Now, I think there's a good chance that the Queen didn't know about a lot of the things that this Sussex squad, terrorist squad, had been saying about the family and the things that they have been doing. More than likely, the people surrounding the Queen kept that toxicity away from her. But getting back to Mark Zuckerberg and today's announcement, while the media is spinning this as a positive for free speech, and Joel Kaplan has now been named as the person that's going to replace Nick Clegg, what I am concerned about is the positioning of all these Republicans to make it look like Zuckerberg is really on board with free speech when it does feel like he is doing a lot to cover his own self. It's become apparent that today's announcement was part of a PR push to get conservatives back in their corner because now we have a different administration. Soon after this post went up, we had Joel Kaplan now on Fox and Friends, which Fox Network hosts it, right-leaning, Rupert Murdoch owning entity, sit there and talk about these decisions that they have made.
If you're making big changes, does that mean you were doing something wrong before?
Look, this is a great opportunity for us to reset the balance in favor of free expression. As Mark says in that video, what we're doing today is we're getting back to our roots in free expression. There's a number of changes we're making, but if I could, I'd just highlight three.
Yep.
First is, as you heard, we're eliminating the third-party fact-checking system. Well-intentioned at the outset, but there's just been too much political bias in what they choose to fact-check and how, so we're just scrapping it entirely.
Said they, what do you mean? You mean you?
The fact-checkers.
You set up your, but they're yours.
Well,
right?
So the idea was they're independent fact-checkers, but they've just been too biased, and so what we're going to do instead is adopt a system like X has of community notes. So we're just going to rely on our own community of users to provide people more information about what they're seeing, and we think that's going to work great.
So give us an example. If the headline is Donald Trump won the presidency, then anyone in the community can write notes underneath it?
Yeah, great question. So somebody can write a note, and then the way it works is different people on the platform can sort of vote on that note. And if you get people who usually disagree, who all say, yeah, that sounds right, then that note gets put on the post and people see it. X has been doing it for a while. We think it's working really well, and we're going to adopt that system.
So, and what are the other ones? I know you want to go.
Yeah, thank you. So the second one is about the rules that govern content on our platform. They've just become too restrictive over time about what people can say, including about those kind of sensitive topics that you mentioned that people want to discuss and debate: immigration, trans issues, gender. We want to make it so that, bottom line, if you can say it on TV, you can say it on the floor of Congress, you certainly ought to be able to say it on Facebook and Instagram without fear of censorship. So we're changing those rules. And then the last thing, if I could, we're also going to change how we enforce the rules. And we're going to make it so that there's way less over-enforcement and way fewer mistakes that actually make up the vast majority of censorship that people experience on our platforms. So big changes, all in service of getting us back to our values of free expression.
So, Joe, I guess the big question is where are the changes coming from? Because, I mean, it's hard not to notice there's been a change in Mark Zuckerberg. You've seen him as, respectfully, the nerdy kid.
Before I continue this clip, I just want people to understand that even though they're positioning and making it look like they brought this guy in and he came from the George W. Bush administration, this guy is not new. In fact, he was at Facebook when all of this stuff was going on because he was the vice president. His boss was Nick Clegg. Don't get it twisted. This guy is a globalist in disguise. Here he is in Paris, and you'll see him if you go through the Getty images. He's participating in all these globalist activities, like for climate change. So even though he's sitting up there talking about how we're restoring back to our roots, don't forget he was there throughout all of this censorship. So he knew what was going on because he was the vice president under Nick Clegg. I don't like all this ass kissing that Mark Zuckerberg is doing to win favor with Trump and the conservatives. I don't trust this guy for 1 second.
Change over to the jiu-jitsu. He's put on some lean muscle. His viewpoints have changed. His posting content, when he does speak, he's taking a meeting with Trump, taking a different stance on certain things. Are these changes coming from him or from what the public is saying?
There's no question that the things that happen at Meta are coming from Mark. But there's also no question that there has been a change over the last 4 years. We saw a lot of societal and political pressure all in the direction of more content moderation, more censorship. And we've got a real opportunity now. We've got a new administration and a new president coming in who are big defenders of free expression. And that makes a difference. One of the things we've experienced is that when you have a U.S. president and administration that's pushing for censorship, it just makes it open season for other governments around the world that don't even have the protections of the First Amendment to really put pressure on U.S. companies. We're going to work with President Trump to push back on that kind of thing around the world.
So, Joel, why now? I know you said it's a change, but did you feel restricted over the last 4 years? And this is the first time it's in your business interest to express this quest for freedom?
Well, there's no question that there's an opportunity here with a new president taking office, as I said, who really believes in free expression. And that's just going to give us the space to get back to those values that Mark has talked about for a long. Mark gave a big speech 6 years ago at Georgetown about free expression, about these values. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of political and societal pressure here and around the world that have pushed away from those values. We've got a real opportunity to reset, get back to them, and really provide a space for free expression.
How was the Biden administration putting pressure on you specifically? Were they calling where they didn't like a post? What did they say, take it down?
Yeah, so Mark talked about this in a letter he sent to the House Judiciary Committee a few months ago. That sort of outlined the way in which we got a lot of pressure around COVID in particular to take down more content, even things like humor and satire about the pandemic and about vaccines. So, we did experience that kind of pressure. The decisions we made ultimately were our own.
Just so you know, he's being very careful about what he's saying about this because they were called out in the Facebook files, as you can see here from the government's report, the exchange between Sheryl Sandberg, Nick Clegg, and Joel Kaplan, of which Joel Kaplan knew very well that this was censorship and knew how the conservatives would react if they suggested they specifically censor the lab leak theory because the White House asked them to do. He felt that it would supercharge the current cycle among conservatives that they were collaborating with the government to censor speech. But that's exactly what they were doing. They were collaborating with them.
But there's a real opportunity here with President Trump coming into office with his commitment to free expression for us to get back to those values and really provide space for people to have the kind of discourse and debate they want to have.
Would you do what X did, and that is unleash independent journalists like Matt Taibbi and Bari Weiss and Michael Schellenberg onto forensically go through what you guys are actually repressing, shielding, shadow banning over the last few years? Wouldn't that be part of this cleansing process?
So we've had an opportunity to do a lot of that with the House Judiciary Committee and Chairman Jordan over the last few months and years, and he put out a really thorough report on the experience that we and other companies have had. Honestly, we're pretty focused on the future and the opportunity we have right now with the changes we're making today to really open up the space for debate and expression.
Is the idea to get out of politics totally and focus on just the enterprise of the free market, people debating things? Or is it for Mark Zuckerberg to become like an Elon Musk and be influential as well, work with the next administration? Or a little bit of both? I don't know.
Well, Mark's always going to be Mark Zuckerberg, but I think there is a real opportunity to work with the new administration, both on free expression, but also on American leadership in technology and innovation. This is something we've seen President Trump is really focused on, making sure that we maintain U.S. competitiveness and leadership on technology, things like AI. Those are obviously super important to our company and our industry, and we'll look forward to working with the new administration to advance those goals.
Right. And Joel, when you talk about content moderation, I think a lot of people watching right now are going, well, you know, it sounds better if they're not taking instructions from the federal government, the Joe Biden administration, saying, hey, this is wrong, take that down. So people like the idea that they're going to have a say, where you can add the community notes going forward. But ultimately, is this one of the things you're doing as a company to make sure that Meta and the other social media companies aren't regulated by Washington? Because that's the last thing you guys want.
Yeah, I think when it comes to expression, especially in the United States, we got a long tradition of the First Amendment, and we think that the right thing is for individual users to have the ability to decide themselves what to say. Look, there's bad stuff that people do online, like they do in the real world, and we want to make sure we don't have that. So we're still going to be enforcing against terrorism and drug sales and child sexual exploitation, things everybody agrees have no business being on our platforms.
What about bullying? All the young little girls. I remember Mark. Remember he was on the Hill, and he had to he kind enough to turn around and apologize to the families, but all those families have lost their kids from bullying. I have a 9-year-old, so I'm starting to get concerned because eventually when she's in high school or even after, she'll be faced with these situations. So what do you say to those families?
Yeah, well, I'm a parent of 2 teenagers.
Gosh, so you're in it.
Yeah, I'm in it. So, yeah, these are issues that I take really seriously, and that a lot of my colleagues who are also parents at Meta and those who aren't parents take really seriously. We got to make sure teens are protected online. We launched a few months ago a product called Teen Accounts that really puts parents in the driver's seat and makes it so that they can see what their kids can see and do online, who can contact them. We put kids in sort of built-in default settings, the most protective settings we have. And then if you're under 16, you can't change those settings on Instagram without your parents' permission. We think that's a really good innovation and something we're hopeful it's an area where Congress can act.
How do we do that setting? How do the parents find that setting on the phone before they give it to their child?
Yeah, well, so we'll send notifications basically to the parents to let them know that this opportunity exists, and the kid can't sign up for Facebook or for Instagram without being put into a teen account, and then their parent gets a notice and says, hey, your kid's trying to sign up, and if you want to change any of the settings, you can do it here.
So, Joel, what you got to do is reestablish trust. I mean, people remember the Zuckerbucks into those key areas in 2020 that were deciding what state, what candidate was going to win what state. And one of the reasons you're trying to do that is, number one, making this announcement here. The other thing is changing your board to let people know, maybe by the people that you're hiring, that you asked to join, that their agenda doesn't match maybe the 2020 agenda. What have you done?
Well, we made a big announcement yesterday, put 3 new board members on, great board members, including Dana White, the president and CEO of UFC. Guy's a legend, an incredible businessman, incredible entrepreneur, marketing genius. Super excited to have him. A couple other great board members with real deep business experience that we put on the board. So those are important voices. Mark has always been great about getting different perspectives so that we sort of cover the waterfront of ideas and perspectives that we want to make sure are getting fed into the process.
Joe, can you tell the audience and the world that this is not a temporary stance? And what I mean by that, is this just because you got Donald Trump in there for 4 years? Are you guys going to continue this after his presidency, or is this just a temporary thing for the moment?
This is an opportunity for us to get back to the values that Mark founded the company on. This runs deep for Mark. It's a great opportunity to rebalance and to get back to free expression.
Right. When you say rebalance, historically, the big tech companies and social media companies have leaned to the left. You know that. Is this dragging it closer to the center? I mean, with Dana White, obviously a Trump ally, as part of the board, is the company becoming more central rather than leaning to one side or the other?
I think the way to look at it is we're a platform for all people and all ideas.
I know, but some people don't feel that certain, and haven't felt historically, that certain social media companies were hospitable to their points of view.
No question. And that's what I meant by rebalance. We want to make sure that they understand that their views are welcome, and that we're providing a space for them to come onto our platforms, engage, express themselves, engage in the important issues of the day, or not in the important issues of the day, and just whatever it is they want to talk about and share. Right. And so we need to make sure they feel welcome. We need to make sure we rebuild trust. And that's a big part of what we're doing today.
So also there's something else that could be in front of the Supreme Court, and that's future of TikTok, China controlled. So you're an American company. You decide to make this announcement. How does this relate to what TikTok could possibly do?
So look, we like competition. We think it makes us better. I know there are concerns that Congress has expressed, and that the president and Congress and the courts are working through with TikTok. We're going to stay focused on what we're doing and how we make our platform as open and welcoming a place as possible for all points of view.
You think it should be banned?
Well, that's something I'm going to leave to the president and the courts and Congress. We're focused, we're focused on what we can do to make our platforms the best they can be.
If Elon Musk didn't buy X and expose what he exposed and put community notes like this, do you think we'd be in the... What did he, in buying this and doing what he did, do for the introspection that Facebook is showing right now?
I think Elon's played an incredibly important role in moving the debate and getting people refocused on free expression. And that's been really constructive and productive. And we're just glad that we've got the opportunity now to make these kind of changes and to get back to our roots in free expression.
Maybe all social media companies can learn a lot from this, because y'all were the original. Mark was one of the originals, at least. And so y'all have had to see all the changes and what works and what doesn't work and what Americans really want. So thank you for your honesty. Thank you for doing this for children and all your customers.
Australia has banned social media up until you're 16 years old. How do you feel about that?
We think the right way to do it is to trust parents. That's what we're doing with the teen accounts that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And obviously we've got to work with governments and follow the laws that they pass. But I think there's a better way, and that's to put parents in charge. They know what's best for their teens and their kids, and that's what we're trying to do.
What's your biggest customer? What age group?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we've got 3.2 billion people using our services, so we really have people across all ages, and we want to make sure we're serving them all and letting them express themselves in a way, especially with teens, where they're still kept safe.
Did you talk to David Sachs about this, who's going to be coming in as the AI? AI czar?
We've talked to David. We're really excited about that post. We think he's going to do great things. He really understands the industry. He really understands crypto and AI, and we can't wait to start working with him.
Well, Joel, thank you very much for stopping by the couch and making the big announcement today.
Hopefully you'll come back as well.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me.
A fair and balanced social media world.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
This is far from over for Harry and Meghan. They are a part of this elite group that do put pressure on social media companies to control narratives. And in this case, have not been immune to using their influence for narrative control, particularly through ventures like the Archwell-Fugazi Public Charities Parents Network. Their push for content moderation under the banner of child safety has been a smokescreen for silencing dissent and promoting their progressive, often divisive ideologies. The accusations of racism against everyone critical of Meghan Markle were a tactic to suppress free speech, much like the broader globalist strategy. The elite's agenda isn't just about political control. It's about maintaining a power structure where crimes against humanity, like child sex trafficking and the sale of organs, remain obscured. Those UK grape gangs are a stark reminder of what happens when evil is protected by censorship. The truth is silent, and the vulnerable are left unprotected. On the surface, I think it's a step in the right direction, but how much of this is really just PR and optics? Yeah, I think some of the things that I've raised here and pointed out are valid. I really don't trust what we're seeing here or what we're being told, especially since we've been lied to so much. I want to see Harry and Meghan and everybody associated, including the opposition, be held accountable for what they did. Because if this goes left unchecked and Harry gets off scot-free, Harry and his bitch wife, as well as the rest of the globalist elite cabal, are going to try it again. Don't think that just because Trump is getting into office that everything is going to be smooth sailing. My final thoughts about this. This shift in Meta's policy might be a facade to distance from past ethical breaches. Or it could be a genuine pivot towards less censorship. Only time will tell. However, for the elite globalists, including figures like Harry and Meghan, this could signify a shift in how they can manipulate public discourse. And I do believe that they're going to find another way. The fear among those who have benefited from this censorship is real because their crimes, hidden in the shadow, might now face the light of scrutiny. Will this change lead to actual improvement? Only if we demand real accountability and not settle for superficial changes meant to appease rather than reform. We've got 13 days to go before it is full on, and I can't wait. But what do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. Thank you for coming by and spending the time. If you believe in exposing these layers of manipulation and control, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the fight against censorship is not just about free speech. It's about revealing the true nature of those in power. And on that note, I'll be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.